It's been an amazing summer, I'll be quite honest about it. I had great difficulty getting on the ballot paper, as everybody knows, and eventually I got 36 nominations with less than 2 minutes to go. And so I was on the ballot paper. And we always felt, those of us that had decided that I would be put forward and onto this, that there was a lot of people out there that wanted politics done a different way, and they saw the Labour Party as the way to achieve it. And we started by doing the hustings events. I started with the Fabian Society hustings, then the General Municipal Workers Union, and then eventually other ones. And we organised public events to follow those hustings in different towns. And I remember very distinctly the public meeting we organised in Nottingham was absolutely ram-packed in the arts centre there. And I realised then the enthusiasm there was for doing things differently.
And was that the moment you thought maybe this might happen?
Not exactly, because we were still being put way behind in everything, but I just felt there was an enthusiasm there. There was a lot of enthusiasm for our campaign, the style of it, and the inclusion of it, because we put out 13 policy consultation proposals, and people are still responding to those, and we involved a huge number of people, both returnees to the Labour Party, who were probably resigned after the Iraq War, and a lot of young people that came in. But one night, you know, we had a phone bank when 400 people came to make phone calls to Labour members and supporters. That's got to be quite a big phone bank for volunteers.
You won against the wishes, though, of the Labour establishment, if you like. What's it like today at Prime Minister's Questions, for example, to be there and know that your colleagues, your MPs sitting behind you, didn't think that you were the right choice?
Very interesting experience, and I've had some absolutely fascinating conversations with people ever since I was elected. Yes, I have a mandate that comes from members and supporters. I was not supported by the majority of MPs, but I have to say they've been respectful, cooperative, and we have managed to put together a shadow cabinet which does have a majority of women on it, and is, I think you would agree, a broad range of opinion. So there's going to be some very interesting debate days ahead, but I think people have to recognise that the thirst out there for a different way of doing politics, a different way of doing our democracy, is something that I feel very strongly about, and there's an enormous responsibility on me to make sure it's delivered.
For how long will you allow members of your shadow cabinet to disagree with you very publicly? So, for example, this week we've seen the Shadow Foreign Secretary say Labour would never campaign to leave the EU. Now, that's not your position, or is it?
Well, we're having discussions to sort this question out, basically on the question of Europe. I want to see a social Europe, a cohesive Europe, a coherent Europe, not a free market Europe. That is a developing position. It's not a problem. We've had that discussion, and we're continuing that discussion. There will be very clear statements coming out in the very near future. Don't worry about that.
But in a straightforward sense, right now, could you see a situation where Labour, with you as leader, did campaign to leave the EU?
No, I don't see that position, because I think we're going to be working with trade unions and social groups all across Europe, as well as social groups in this country. So I see the way forward as how we develop the idea of a social Europe. What I was opposed to and remain opposed to is the idea that David Cameron could go around Europe and give up workers' rights, give up environmental protection, give up a whole lot of things that are very important, because Europe has an interesting twin-track approach. Up until Maastricht, there was a growth in the social Europe idea. Post-Maastricht, it's been very much free market economics. I want to see something different.
But what happens if David Cameron comes back with a deal that you don't like? If those protections that you think are very important do disappear? In a straightforward way, can you see, if you don't get the deal, if David Cameron doesn't get a deal that you agree with, can you see Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party hypothetically campaigning to leave the EU?
Well, it's a hypothetical question, but what I would do first of all is strongly oppose what Cameron has done and say we have to stay in Europe to change those policies, and that would be a manifesto commitment up to 2020. But we're working this position out at the moment.
That's fascinating, though, because that's a change, a very clear change in your position. But you have said previously...
I've said I wouldn't give Cameron a blank cheque, and I don't give him a blank cheque.
Very interesting. On another subject, welfare, for example, your shadow cabinet, members of them, have said they do support the welfare cap. Do you?
The welfare cap is an imposition by this government which hurts the life chances of a lot of poor people who receive housing benefit to pay for exorbitant private rented property. And it's been imposed, and the effect has been social cleansing of the central areas of many of our cities. I am opposed to that cap. I don't believe it's fair or right, and I don't believe we should reduce it either and have a twin-track cap across the country. And so I see it as being removed.
So you want it to be removed. Members of your shadow cabinet do not. They've been clear about that. For how long will you allow the situation to go on where it's discussion rather than decision? Because some people believe if you're at odds with the members of your team, it gives out a message that you're not really in charge.
The message is this cap is damaging to people's life chances. The message is this cap is unfair. The message is that the government also should consider about the amount of money that's spent from the welfare budget that subsidises low wages and high rents.
But on the point of disagreements with your team, voters eventually need to know what the Labour Party would actually do if you're in charge. Who is in charge? Is it your policy?
I've been elected to lead the party. I want to take people with me. My whole default position is one of discussion and persuasion, and that's the discussion and persuasion that's going on. Now, you, if I may say so, seem to be assuming that I'm going to dictate everything. No, I'm not. I'm going to persuade people. That's what my position is. But I would ask colleagues to recognise the mandate that the leader of the party has received from a much wider electorate.
So in the end, the final decision is yours, with that huge mandate.
Yes.
Yesterday, you didn't sing the national anthem. Today, we're told that you will on other public occasions. You are having to shift on some of your principles that got you into this
I was
position.
at an event yesterday to commemorate the Battle of Britain, and it was a beautiful service, and it was in St Paul's Cathedral, and I was thinking about the sacrifices that people made, my family's generation made, and the post-war settlement from which we've all greatly benefited. I was there to show respect for their sacrifice and respect for it, and I stood with it proper attention, as I did today when we had groups of service people and others who came in who'd been dealing with the Ebola crisis in West Africa.
But was it wrong not to sing the national anthem? If now you say you will at similar events, was it wrong or disrespectful not to do so yesterday?
I think it's very strange that the only thing the majority of the media are remotely interested in is that, rather than the importance of that occasion or the importance of other issues within our society. It seems to me that there's some people that are kind of over-concerned about these things.
But do you see why some people do think that is important?
I fully understand it. I was at the event to show respect, and I did show respect and throughout that event, and I will continue to do so at all the other events I attend.
As leader of Her Majesty's Opposition, you are now going to become a member of the Privy Council. Part of the ceremony to become a member of the Privy Council involves kneeling before the Queen. Will you do that?
I haven't yet been invited to join the Privy Council.
Downing Street says that you have.
They have, but I haven't seen any letters. I'm looking forward to seeing the letter and finding out what's involved.
When you accept, or are you clear you will accept the invitation to join?
If it goes with the job, yes. But I'm not sure it does.
At the ceremony, so let's say Downing Street have said you are being invited to join the Privy Council. You say you will accept that. Part of that involves kneeling before the Queen. Will you do that?
I didn't know that was involved, actually. So we'll have to find out about it. Okay?
But will you do it? That isn't the ceremony. That is what is involved.
Okay, thank you.
Thinking?
Well, of course I'll end up being a member of the Privy Council if that's what the requirement of the job is. I think there are some things that ought to change in our society, and maybe that's one of them.
Will you do that, though? It's an important symbol to people who believe in it. I'm not saying for 1 second whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do.
To be quite honest, it's the first time I've heard that is part of it. So can we leave it at that?
It's just an interesting question. I think people will wonder what you might think of that. Would you commit to doing it now?
Can we think about that? Thank you.
So that's a no?
No, it's not a no. I was the first I've heard of it. I want to discuss with colleagues this whole process.
There has been controversy about your Shadow Chancellor's previous praise for the IRA. Do you understand a lot of people, particularly given the current crisis at Stormont, find some of the new leadership's positions hard to stomach?
John McDonnell has been involved in promoting the peace process in Ireland for a very long time, and it has been very consistent on achieving that. Like me, he fully supports the Belfast Agreement, the Good Friday process and the peace process in Northern Ireland, which is a huge step forward, and I think we should recognise that. And I hope that the crisis in Stormont is resolved. I hope that the crisis is resolved by agreement between the major parties, so we continue with the D'Hondt principle on appointment and the power sharing agreement.
Forgive me, that wasn't my question. My question was, do you understand why some members of the public have concerns, find it hard to stomach the way that you and John McDonnell have in the past praised the Republican movement? Do you understand that?
I have supported the idea of bringing peace to Northern Ireland, and I think the construction of the early days before the Good Friday Agreement, when Sinn Féin and the SDLP came to agreement, and then Sinn Féin, SDLP and the Unionists came to agreement, in which they recognised the different historical pasts they'd had, different traditions, was something that was a great achievement. It was the only way to bring about peace, because there was never going to be a military solution in Northern Ireland, and I never wanted a military solution. I always wanted, as John did, a peaceful solution, and I think we're getting there.
Just finally, you've had enormous success in building a campaign, quite new. What does success for Jeremy Corbyn as the Labour leader look like? Is this Syriza, like in Greece? Do you see this as a sort of popular revolt against the Westminster establishment? What's your vision, I suppose? Our
party has grown enormously. We've recruited over 30,000 members since the end of our election campaign on Saturday morning. And that is a big achievement. We have more than 500,000 people taking part in this election process. Party membership and activity are going up a great deal. So I see this as development of a much more social movement orientated Labour Party, much more involved in community activity and community campaigns. There's something very exciting about the number of young people that have got involved in politics, who everyone had written off as a non-political generation. In fact, it was politics that had written them off. That's what's exciting about this.
With you as Prime Minister?
2020 is some way off. We've got a lot of campaigning to do. We've made an incredible start. We have the biggest party membership we've had for many, many decades, if not ever, and it's very, very exciting. And I'm looking forward to all the challenges ahead. We've only 4 days ago won this election campaign. It's been an incredibly complicated and busy 4 days, but I think we've achieved a number of things. We've achieved a majority women shadow cabinet. We've achieved a politically balanced shadow cabinet which reflects the different strands of opinion within the Parliamentary Labour Party. We've achieved a lot more party members, and I was able to address the TUC yesterday to assure them of the close relationship between the traditions of the trade unions and to oppose the government attempt to restrict the rights of people to organise themselves in this country, which itself is a contravention of the European Convention on Human Rights and the International Labour Organization conventions. I think first 4 days, very busy, very exciting, very interesting. Roll on the next 4 years.
Jeremy Corbyn, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.